Hey, 7th grade, Mr. Hildebrand here. This is for Thursday, September 10th, so 9/10. This is kind of our lesson, what we did today in class. First thing I wanted to show you is we did watch the tragic myth of Orpheus. Okay, so you can go ahead and watch that one if you want. You don't have to. It's our myth that we watched today. Then what we did was we moved on to our Nearpod. Okay, and we talked about citizens. Now, citizenship in ancient Greece, different than citizenship today. I know we had a lot of good discussions over the last couple of weeks about social structure in the United States and what's been fair, what's been unfair. What are good things the United States has accomplished as far as its citizenship and its laws? What are some things that it still needs to work on? So we've had all those conversations, and they've related to ancient Greece here. In ancient Greece, we did see it was very unfair, that only men who were born in that specific city had citizenship rights, that if you were a woman, no rights. If you were not old enough, you weren't an adult, you were a child, there's very little rights or protections that you had. Ancient Greeks, they did have slaves. Right, so there were some people who had no rights and were considered property. Now, we did discuss the big difference between ancient slaves and American slavery. Being in American slavery, Europeans went to Africa and they kidnapped and captured and enslaved free Africans and made them slaves in the colonies in the United States. And that was racially based, right? Slaves in the Americas, or at least in the colonies, were black. In the ancient world, skin color, it wasn't so monochromatic for slaves. Slaves could have been from Africa. They could have been from Northern Europe, like Ireland or Britain. They could have been from the Middle East. They could have been from all over the place. And that's because slavery in the ancient times had to do with either not enough money. So if your family went into debt, you could be sold as a slave. So if you were poor, it could happen. Or if you were a prisoner of war. So we talked about ancient Egypt having slaves, right? Where sometimes they'd go to war against another civilization. They'd capture the soldiers and make them slaves. So we talked about those differences. And then we also talked about, hey, maybe you were an adult, maybe you were a man, but maybe you just weren't born in Greece or born in that city. You didn't have the rights either. But if you were a free adult man who was born in that city, you were allowed to vote if that city had a democracy and be involved in the politics. You could own property. You could work for the government or hold public office. And if you had to go to court, you were allowed to speak for yourself and defend yourself. We also talked about how that's the right the citizens had, but they were also expected to serve their government or help. For example, they were expected to take public office and serve their fellow citizens. If the city got attacked, they were supposed to defend it. And a lot of times they wanted to, because the cities were pretty small. So if someone was getting attacked, it was probably a family member or a close friend. We continued on. There's little quizzes and little questions throughout here that can kind of help you study for the test. That'll be in a couple weeks. I'm going to skip over them for right now, save you a little bit of time. But when we were moving on, we also talked about ancient Greek government and the 4 types of ancient Greek government. We did watch this video. If you search ancient Greece government in 5 minutes or less, you can find it, or you can just watch it right there on the Nearpod. But we talked about the 4 types. We talked about monarchy. So monarchy, I want you to think of a crown. I want you to think of a king or a queen. Mono, whenever you see the M-O-N, that means one. Just like Monopoly, we have one winner for the whole board. Mono means one. When you see monotheism that we talked about this year, that's one belief in one God. So monarchy is a system of government in which one person's in charge, and that power is typically passed down because of your heredity or because of kind of passed down from like father to son or generation to generation. Because you're basically born into power. Tyranny, that's also a system in government where typically it's one person, sometimes a couple, but typically one person who's in charge. But that ruler is cruel and oppressive. Okay, they often use violence to get power and to keep power. So tyranny, think violent. Oligarchy is a system in which a few people rule. A lot of times that's based on either old family ties or based on money. Maybe it's a few people who end up being rich and they're the ones who have the power. That's an oligarchy. Democracy. So that's the one that's most popular in the world today. It's the one that we talk about a lot in this class. System of government with all the citizens have a say or a vote. So everybody gets to vote. Everybody gets to be heard. A lot of people think that the United States has a democracy, and I would say kinda, because we do have a vote. We do have a say. But we don't have a direct democracy. So in a direct democracy, everybody gets together all at once and they vote and they talk it out. We have over 300 million people. We can't all get together at once. It would be too crazy. So we have what's called a democratic republic. A republic is a system where you vote for other people and then they make decisions for you. So that's what we have. We vote, and that's how we have our political say and our political voice. Obviously, unless we run for office ourselves. And then we vote for people. They represent us. If they do a great job, we keep voting for them. If they do a bad job, we vote for somebody else next time. So those are the 4 types of government. We practiced coming up with different symbols or little tricks to help us remember. We did talk about a couple other Greek city-states that are a little less famous. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about Athens and Greece over the next Athens and Sparta over the next couple weeks. But we did talk about a couple other ones. One was Corinth. It's a very powerful city. It was ruled by a king, so it was a monarchy. We looked at this VR of the Corinthian Canal, over the Isthmus of Corinth. Lots of ships traveled through here and do a lot of trading, so lots of business. They dug a canal right through there so ships could go through, get across the land. Corinth at one point had a big unemployment problem, and they chose to fix this by creating a public works project where basically they hired unemployed people who didn't have jobs, to build things for the city. They would build aqueducts, which were basically above ground pipes, which bring water, roads, bridges, all these kind of things. It also helped because it solved the drinking water problem. They had a shortage, and that helped as well. We also saw that Corinth got rich because they created a money exchange program. So let's pretend that Mr. Carpenter has Mr. Carpenter dollars and Mr. Hildebrand, he has Mr. Hildebrand bucks. And let's say Mr. Carpenter has a sweet business up in his room and I want to go buy something. And I show up and I say, Mr. Carpenter, I would love to buy your products. If Mr. Carpenter says, well, I don't take Mr. Hildebrand bucks. I only take Mr. Carpenter dollars. And I say, oh, well, I've got 20 Mr. Hildebrand bucks. How many Mr. Carpenter dollars is that going to give me? And he says, oh, well, it only gets you 5. Well, now suddenly we ran into a problem because maybe that exchange rate's off. But if that's the only money I can spend there, then I kind of have to make that trade, even if it may not be fair. And that's how Mr. Carpenter could, in that situation, make a little extra money. Well, that's what Corinth was doing. Corinth was creating their own coins. And they said, if you want to shop here, you can only use our coins. So you have to trade your money or something valuable for these coins. You see this happen sometimes at places like Chuck E. Cheese or Dave & Buster's, or places where they might charge you a fee, like say, hey, you know what? You can't put quarters into our machine, but you can buy our own coins. And we'll charge you 25 cents extra. Or you can buy this little card that you can swipe. The card's $10, and then you can load money onto it. That's kind of like a money exchange. You're basically paying extra just to shop there. We also saw that Corinth felt like their schools were just as good as Athens. They thought their military was just as strong as Sparta. They kind of were like the little brother, sister, the cousin who kept trying to fit in and show off. And Athens and Sparta kind of were too cool and did their own thing. But Corinth does become very well respected by other city-states throughout their history. We looked at some maps of the region. We also talked about Argos, which had a very profitable harbor where ships would come in and do a lot of trading. They weren't very good at farming. The land wasn't good for it, so they had to do some trading in order to get money and to get food. They were big on art, so plays and pottery, different things like that. And they also were a monarchy, so they had a king. Thieves, we talked about a little bit. They were a big rival of Athens. In fact, they were kind of the traitors, the ones who sided with the Persians in the Persian War, which we'll learn about in a week or two. And they were gaining a lot of power until that guy, Alexander the Great, who we're going to talk about kind of at the end of this unit, came in and then took over all of Greece. So that's kind of where we got today. I did introduce to you a new assignment. So from yesterday, you had your neighborhood drawing to do. So if you go to week 3 assignment page, yesterday I talked about the modern polis and how you were drawing your neighborhood or your city and comparing it through drawing and labeling to the ancient Greek cities. And there's directions there, and there's a video there to show you how to do it. Today, I posted some directions on basically how you're making a comic strip in order to explain the different types of ancient Greek government. Okay, monarchy, tyranny, democracy, oligarchy. I will take paper versions. I also have a video here explaining the project / showing you a tool that you can use online to help create things and then share with me. Okay, so that's on there as well. And as always, if you have any questions or need any help, just send me an email. All right, folks, take care.